thanks everybody for joining today. We have a very exciting panel on future of work and hybrid work. Obviously, it has been sort of intensified because of COVID-19, right? But I personally have been working remotely since 2018 and have really enjoyed it. And because of COVID, I didn't see any difference in my own working style. But yeah, I'm sure that there are people who have seen tremendous amount of change in their corporate life, in their how their organization, how their employees are performing, or how they are organizing the work and things of that nature. So we will be having a lot of interesting discussions around hybrid work, future of work, remote work today. And we have a very interesting panel to talk about their insights, to share their expertise on the topic. Briefly about myself, about EthAum Venture Partners. We are a deep tech accelerator based in Singapore. We have 56 startups in a portfolio. All of these are AI, ML, blockchain, IoT, AR, VR kind of startups coming from different parts of the world, different sectors, different stages. And we as an accelerator are highly focused on making sure that we are helping startups acquiring customers. And we are able to sort of do similar kind of webinars, roundtables, to make sure that we are able to talk to the right kind of targeted audience. We are able to get the expert opinion on the industry sector that the startups are trying to disrupt. So that's the reason that we have this roundtable or panel today. We have JB with us, who is the founder of FLYDESK. But before going to JB, before going to FLYDESK, and before starting all the panel questions, I would request our panelists, our panel, to introduce themselves, talk about their professional life, their personal life, why they're excited about this topic, and so on and so forth. So I see Sumit on the screen, so I'll start with Sumit. Sumit, introduction, please. Please unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sumit. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Capgemini for Southeast Asia and Hong Kong and Taiwan. I live in Singapore. And of course, the nature of our business is such that we have been working remotely and in a hybrid manner for many years. But I think what changed tremendously for us was clients who perhaps had been, some clients had of course been open to remote work, but they still preferred to have business consultants and so on site, and that changed, and that's allowed us truly to operate from anytime, anywhere, and really bring the best talent to bear. So, and as COO, a large part of what I do is, the best way to deliver services to our clients. So for me, just in my job, all of this has mattered tremendously. I'm also in charge of people matters and things like learning and development and employee engagement. All of the things that you would imagine are terribly important in these times. That's me, and I'm glad to be here and to listen to all of the other panelists, your experience, and happy to share mine, of course.
Thanks a lot, Sumit. Really appreciate. Sahar.
Hi, everyone. Sahar Ahmed. I'm the CHRO for Asia for Mercer, based out of Hong Kong. So I would call myself the accidental HR leader, but the part of my career that I've loved, started off as a corporate banker, reinvented myself in HR, and that has been the most fascinating part of my career. And through this wonderful career journey, I've cut across 5 industry segments. So I've been a deep Asian player. I've done some global roles as well, but cut across. I've got the breadth because of the industries I've worked with. Future of work is close to my heart because the world as we knew it changed completely 20 months ago, and we've all had to change with it. And we've learned, along the way. We continue to learn, and I'd love to share what we did differently and how we learned from some of our successes and failures. And Mercer is a thought leader to a number of clients as a leading global HR consulting firm. So, we have a point of view on this topic, and it's something that we had to implement on ourselves as well as consult to clients. So wonderful to be here and delighted to be on this panel.
Thanks a lot, Sahar. I would go to CJ. CJ,
Thank you, Bakaj. Nice to meet everyone here. CJ, I lead the Asia sales team based out of Australia, actually Sydney, Australia. So I have been with Zoom for over 3.5 years, and prior to that was at Google. You know, the past 2 years has been very interesting and very busy 2 years for Zoom, and we are in a very unique situation and position to help you know, the community to connect. So I look forward to, you know, collaborating with everyone here to learn their perspective and their views around, you know, future work and then the hybrid work as well.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, CJ. Really appreciate your time. Nishal.
Thanks, Pankaj, for having me here. Hello, everyone. This is Nishal Dua. I'm the Director of Marketing at AirMeet. We are an events platform and a fully remote-first organization. I've myself been a huge advocate and evangelist of remote work for more than 7 years now. I founded the world's largest remote work online conference called the Remote Work Summit. Over the last 6 years, I've personally interviewed close to 250 remote leaders across the world. So you can think of a company and I might have interviewed someone over there. All that to say is that, you know, the amount of learning that I've taken on from these people who have been researching on remote work, writing books, they've been creating white papers, they've been experimenting with companies of all sizes from 10 to 10,000. It's just massive amounts of learning in terms of how remote work and its philosophies have evolved over the last 5 years, and what exactly happened over the last 1 and 2 years ever since the pandemic hit us. So the landscape and our understanding of what remote really is has been radically evolving over the last couple of years. And I think that's what I'm here to talk about.
Thanks a lot, Nishal. So you have been working on remote work since 2014 or so, which is fantastic. Okay, we have one unofficial surprising guest from Clarkson. We have Jason and Julian from Clarkson, and they will be pretty. They will also have very interesting opinion, insights about remote work and employee engagement and things of that nature. So, Julian or Jason, do you want to introduce yourself? Or probably you wanna do that later.
I'm also here from
Matthew,
Clarkson. Thank you, Pankaj, for having us. I see that we are quite a lot of my colleagues here, so this is indeed a very interesting topic for us. So Clarkson, we provide a suite of tools to help people to embrace those hybrid ways of working. So exactly what other panelists have been describing, and we've been let's say advocating for this hybrid ways of working for years. And well, obviously, since 1 year and a half, that became a major topic for all organizations worldwide. So, well, happy to share some thoughts today as well.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Matthew. Okay, now, obviously, we want this event to be very interactive. So as an audience, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have insights, please feel free to share your opinion in the chat. You can also unmute yourself and share your inputs. But why don't we start with the panel now? We have JB, CEO of FLYDESK, on the call. I'm sure he would love to talk about FLYDESK for 2 minutes and then jump into the Q&A. So JB, are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you hear me okay?
Yep, please go ahead, continue.
Thanks, Pankaj. So I'm JB, I'm the founder of FLYDESK, company based in Hong Kong. And we basically are focused to enable hybrid work for companies. And we started our activity in 2019. So some of my friends actually think that I'm responsible for the COVID. I have nothing to do with it. But that being said, we are in a very dynamic market right now. And we are defining ourselves as a software company. And we are combining different elements that help companies solve the challenges around hybrid work. One has to do with the shared office management. The other one has to do with the management of distributed teams. And lastly, we've also integrated a network of co-working spaces, like one of the largest one in Asia to begin with, allowing companies to also access additional desks and meeting rooms and so on. So I won't talk too much about FLYDESK here because the focus is more to try and get some insights about everyone here around the trends on hybrid work. So maybe I'll get started with the first question. around actually the office transformation and these challenges around getting people back to the office. And maybe I will direct the first question to Sumit, if that's okay, and Sarah will also elaborate on that. Is how do you expect basically the office real estate to evolve in this post-pandemic world? Will people come back to the office like before? And if not, how do you think this is going to evolve in the way people, now are exploring the office? So Sumit, do you think you could help us, give us your opinion on this?
Yeah, indeed. And I feel like this is a subject that has been spoken of so much. I wonder if I have anything new to add, but I'm going to tell you what I think anyway. I suppose we still think that that a number of our employees are going to continue to work in remote ways and more importantly in hybrid ways. But we certainly see a reduction in office space and business travel because we've found that productivity went up. I think it was in Q3 of 2020 that Capgemini did a survey of I can't recall exactly, but I think it was about 1,000 organizations, and by then some of the tools and methods had been established, and productivity definitely gone up, costs were down. But subsequently, perhaps by Q1 of 2021, we found that mental health issues, stress, demotivated folks, especially in the sort of age bracket of 30 to 40. So the younger, but perhaps it's spread across, but that's what we saw. So clearly there's a space for both things. And in my own experience in Singapore, where offices have been open and shut, I've found that I go to the office less than I used to, but more than I did when we were completely locked down. So I enjoy going in, meeting a few folks, but it's not necessary for us to do that, to do our jobs for the most part. A last angle I might add is, we, as consultants, as people who sort of engage with B2B clients all the time, I was on the road a lot, maybe 2 or 3 days a week, flying across Asia for the most part, but for one meeting often. And certainly now I wonder why I ever did that. But I'm not so sure that, it's a little bit about game theory. If my competitor is going to do that when we open up, I might have to think about it again. Because is the client going to appreciate the guy who's going to show up or the girl who's going to show up in person? So there are some things to think about beyond, of course, many of the things we've talked about, just access to people, and everybody doesn't have enterprise grade connectivity at home. In some homes I know where you live with larger families, it's been stressful. So there are all kinds of things at play. So not a lot to add. I think we're going to go back to more than this, but less than what we had.
So a pure transition to hybrid with a mix of both, taking the best out of both worlds, maybe. And you wrote some points around, the feeling of people, the human aspect, that the impact it had on people, and I think it's a good transition also for Sarah, who's been also, in this HR world, and it has a lot of impact and pressure on HR and people. So Sarah, do you mind also telling us a little bit how you feel the office is going to evolve and how it's going to affect people also personally?
Absolutely. So it's interesting because professional services firms and consulting firms have been very progressive, and at Mercer, we believe all roles can flex. That is a mantra they live and breathe. So when, the pandemic hit us, we were kind of better served and we could manage this. We had moved to agile workspaces and hot desking, and nobody had a designated desk. We made that shift before the pandemic. But I think that this is going to go a whole level further because we've gone from lockdowns to split teams to all iterations of getting people back to the office. I think at the end of the day, the companies that come out ahead are the ones that can dial down their costs. And I'm a big believer in the variable cost model. So the companies that can bring down real estate costs, which are the second highest cost after your people costs are the ones that are going to survive and thrive in this new world. So co-working spaces like the ones you've created, and creating sort of regional distributed co-working spaces near people's homes where they can go. And that might be the next evolution of this whole hybrid workspace.
And around I talk with a lot of HR people also who are facing this challenge because they still are in this transition. So they're still left with their actual office. So how do you, and they're trying to find this balance of actually trying to have the good reasons for getting people back to the office from time to time. And do you have some tips and ideas to share for those people? Do you see a value of actually still bringing back to the people to the office?
Absolutely. And, we follow government regulations in all our markets. But, definitely when it's open, we want people to come back, but we would never force them. We let them know they always have flexibility, but treat them like adults and let them find the right rhythm that works for them. And then, it's all about flexibility and accountability, and that works both ways. So hold people accountable on what they need to deliver on, agree on the way to stay connected, and let's get the work done, So definitely, I think there'll be some cost saving coming out for companies, but some companies definitely want to keep some branded office spaces. It'll just shrink. The footprint will have to shrink.
And before we move on to the more the technology with Zoom, Hermit, Klaxon also, one question still for you, Sarah, maybe. So did you see some innovation? Did you see some tools, some technology that you actually also expect from the startup ecosystem that you saw that were really helping this transition to the new way of working and hybrid work?
I think we've all become Zoom experts. It's all like we live and die by Zoom. We have Zoom fatigue and we have Zoomtopia. I mean, what was the world like before that? Now we're all, using things for collaboration like Teams, as well as Mural and Miro for whiteboarding, and then Slido and Mentimeter for getting live feedback. I mean, there's so many inventions coming out of the space to keep things interesting, because at the end of the day, your life is all about meetings. You've got to make those virtual meetings interactive and interesting. And I think there's going to be a lot of innovation that should come out of it. One of the biggest thing is you're telling people you're on mute. Can they create an invention when somebody starts talking, the mute button goes off? That might be an invention that we might want next.
I think it's a perfect transition for Zoom, because I know that sometimes I talk and Zoom now actually tells me that I'm on mute. So it's actually a good transition to CJ maybe. Are you able to maybe share with us some of the ideas, the innovation that you are putting out there that are really helping people and companies work in this new hybrid model, basically?
Yeah, thank you, JB. Great question. So from Zoom's perspective, I think enabling a flexible and a video-first communication, it is our goal, and frictionless. Obviously, back to what you said about the internet isn't 100% all the time. So that's our specialty, and we think communication as a market, it is very big, and there's a lot of room for everyone. Now we are hearing a lot of customers are asking for different things. Like, for example, Saya talk about Miro and events and Ahmed as well. I see here. So like we built these Zoom apps that can integrate with that now have 1,000 apps. You can actually now change your virtual background using the Zoom apps. You can integrate with Asana. You can integrate with Zendesk and all these kind of tools that help you streamline your workflow. We also listen to our customers, and they ask for contact centers, right? Like we are talking to Five9, and subject to approval, we may have a contact center in the future. We also recently launched, back to the language, translating language. We acquired a company called Kai that really help us to break down barrier. At some point, people who speak French will be able to receive or communicate to people who speak, Chinese. So we are integrating a lot of the artificial intelligence in the mix. So that's how we see it. How can we keep innovating and help all sort of different use cases to really break down the language barrier and help them, give them the options to communicate the way they want to the people they want. This is always something we are always thinking about.
Yeah, thank you, CJ. How about you, Nishal? How does AirMeet brings its value onto this very dynamic market from a technology standpoint? How do you help companies face these challenges around having distributed teams and different cultures that you have to get together?
Sure, JB, thank you. I'll come to that in a minute. I think what I'm more excited about is kind of addressing everything that we've talked about so far. So far, we've heard, why hybrid really works, why people are excited about hybrid. I've got a very different view here. In fact, I've got a diametrically opposite view here. I think, and so I'm a brutally honest person. I'll be absolutely blunt about this. I think hybrid sucks, plain and simple. It's a compromise. It's a compromise, and it's the worst of both worlds. Effectively, in all my understanding and experience, hybrid is something that makes leaders comfortable because they're resistant to change. And they don't want to be seen as non-progressive. They don't want to be seen as anti-remote. So for most leaders, the conversation goes, hey, we want to give our people the choice of being remote, but we still want them to come to the office. We still want to see who's working, and we want to see their attendance in front of us. We think that there are certain very critical aspects of the work that cannot be done remotely. And there are all sorts of different reasons why hybrid gets justified. But effectively, like with any other innovation, hybrid is just a way to dilute the real value proposition of remote. Remote really doesn't mean location independence. That's how we look at remote. We think remote means work from home, work from office, work from beach, wherever it is. The real reason why remote works, and the real reason why, there's a very clear observation that if you guys start looking into it, you'll realize that if we take any industry segment and if we chart the growth trajectory of a few companies which are fully remote and their competitors who are not fully remote, you'll see that the fully remote companies are doing a lot better. They're doing better revenue, better profitability, better employee retention, better engagement, better happiness, better customers. That trend is very clearly out there. I've got numerous white papers to prove that. That's not happening because their folks are having the ability to work from anywhere. Just location flexibility doesn't make a company that better. The reason why remote works for a lot of organizations, and the reason why their people are happier and their revenues are better and their profitability is a lot better, is because remote forces you to innovate. Remote forces you to become better at communication, better at collaboration, better at personal discipline, better at management. And all of those changes are what we are kind of afraid of, which is why we say, hey, let's do hybrid. It seems like the best of both worlds, but it's effectively like the worst of both worlds. And, I think, JB, you mentioned between that, let's talk about how the offices are going to evolve. In my opinion, they're not going to evolve. They're going to die out. Offices as a concept is going to die out because they'll become more open, collaborative, on-demand, shared, experiential areas. So effectively, an office is not owned by an organization. An office is owned by an entity where individual contributors are always going there to connect, to collaborate. That's where the social distancing, that's where the demotivation, that's where the mental health aspect gets addressed. The reason why I am so against a hybrid model is because like I talked about where the origin of hybrid is. The origin of hybrid effectively is in our resistance to adopt what's going to happen effectively, right? Because innovation doesn't happen within your comfort zone. Innovation happens at the edge of your comfort zone. So if you're resistant to change, it will not happen. Second, I feel the reason why remote will fail, the reason why hybrid as a practice will not really work to its best potential is because there will then be a need for organizations to have two separate types of cultures: a remote first culture for their remote employees and an in-office culture. It's already difficult for organizations to have one really good culture. How can they maintain two separate lines of cultures? It'll also mean parallel lines of communication. People who are working in the office, people who are closer to their managers and to the leadership and to the hierarchy, they will always be in the loop of certain other additional informations that the remote employees will feel left out of. They'll always be feeling that, I'm not part of the inner circle and I'm losing out on something because of that. There will also be a huge amount of effort required from organizations and people management leaders to better onboard their employees, to better engage their employees, to better retain them. All of that effort can either happen in an in-office culture or in a distributed remote first culture. But trying to do both at the same time, it's a recipe for disaster. It simply means, hey, I think we really want a remote, we really want an in-office culture. We want people to come to the office, but we don't want to be seen as, non-progressive. So let's also give you the option of remote allowed. So it's not remote first, it's remote allowed as a culture. And I feel that as a practice is just a middle ground, which is not drawing in from the best of both worlds. It's actually the worst of both worlds.
Interesting. Very uncommon way, to be honest, looking at the surveys that we're seeing. It's an interesting approach. I mean, FLYDESK being 100% remote first company, I can tell you I'm pretty happy now to be able, at least in one country, to go back to the office just from time to time. But very interesting approach. I want to also hear from Mathieu also. I think you also have some maybe opinions, different ways. So I'll be happy to hear your thought about it.
Exactly. Hi, guys. So hopefully Wi-Fi is back on my side. Definitely not accounting for going back to the office because I'm at the office at the moment and internet is not really stable. Actually, I wanted to build on what Nishal was saying. I think his position is very interesting because it's probably about defining what hybrid means. And usually hybrid tends to be summed up to connecting seamlessly people in the office and people working remotely. I think it's a lot more than that, and we've seen that coming from our community of users when things turned remote back in 2020. Taking the way we used to work in the office and putting it in a hybrid way is, I agree potentially with Nishal, is a recipe for disaster. It's also about rethinking the way we work in teams. And for us, hybrid also meant, and we heard that from our user community, rethinking the way team work in terms of rhythm, thinking about synchronicity and async work as well. And maybe rethinking some rituals that we used to do all together in the office, and rituals that might not necessarily work well in a hybrid format or 100% remote format. Innovation, for example, is something that works extremely well in the room. And I think going forward, we'll have to rethink the way the office can accommodate for smaller teams and for us to work efficiently as we go in a team of 6 or 7, and for the environment to allow for that, so whiteboarding, potentially, connecting some folks remotely. But I agree with Nishal, probably we'll need to save those precious moments in the office for innovation. Whereas a lot of the extra work, our workday, our work week, can be rethought in terms of, do we need to do it in a meeting? Not necessarily. Maybe we can take some of these topics and turn it into an async work. And visual collaboration, I heard from Sir, adopting new tools. We also have our own version of a whiteboarding tool, definitely got more used in an async mode over the past few months, rather than being used only in meetings as well. And we see the power of that helping teams to take off some of that time spent in meetings to gain time again to do also deep work. We've been really challenged over the past few months to find time to actually get some work done. And we might have spent a little bit too much time in meetings per se, as a way to feel connected because we didn't see each other. But it's also about helping our users and helping staff and collaborators to rethink going forward how they can balance sync and async work as well. So something that we're working with our users of Klaxoon all around the world. So I think Nishal is right in the way that hybrid can't just be remote plus office. It needs for a bigger sort of a revolution.
Yeah, thank you, Mathieu. One of the aspects that is also very recurring around as you try, let's say if everything goes remote as Nishal's vision at some point, there are some elements that are very common in the fear of the management, for instance, that has to do with company culture, creating this bond that links people together, having a shared mission and being able to also have some casual moments and seeing each other, not to talk about work. And we hear a lot about those things about doing some, virtual happy hours and things. But I mean, at the end of the day, we are connected all the time. You're connected on your phone, you do everything online, and we are obsessed. So being able to disconnect also and being able to see one another physically. So how do you maintain a company culture in a fully remote environment? Do you have some things to share? I mean, maybe to let also Sumit also, do you want to elaborate also on this point? And I can pass the ball back to anyone who wants to add on this. Do you have ideas on how to preserve a company culture in a very distributed remote environment? I mean, you have consultants at Capgemini. I used to be one of them, actually. So how do you make this work today to maintain this link, this belief around the company vision, the company culture?
So, to start with, I have to say that for us, of course, there's been a tremendous change because of the pandemic. But you have to remember that even before the pandemic, in the Singapore office, we have something like 30 or 40 people who sit there. We've got 2,000 people who serve our clients in Singapore. They're at client sites, they're elsewhere. So we've had a distributed, hybrid, these ways of working for a long time. And therefore established rituals and so on for driving that culture, whether it's, our shared values or offsites or all kinds of things. But for me, there is a difference, right? The pandemic has done to, I think, Nishal's point. Now you don't have a choice. When we had the choice, and in our organization, there's always been a fair amount of flexibility about where you work from. You came to the office when it was necessary to do so, because for the most part, you worked with people that were across the globe anyway. And indeed, what's happened is the reverse of what we expected. Even though we're a global organization, it was not always easy to mobilize people from across the globe all the time, but it is now, because it's expected that you could work anytime, anywhere. And because clients are now open to that, we've got people working from anytime, anywhere. The effect on them, that's another matter. So I would say that there's been more focus on I might call it on leadership and employee engagement than there was before. We've always had digital tools. We've always had rituals, reporting mechanisms, collaboration tools, and so on. I think what we didn't perhaps focus on before was employee health, connection, looking after the introverts, the people who don't speak up for themselves. Those are the kind of things that we have to find solutions for. So yeah, I guess the challenge for us is to not take this too much for granted, that, oh, we've always known this. Tell me what's new. There is something new that's going on, and we have to focus on that. So for us, it's been a lot about, in Singapore, for example, all of our managers are now going through coaching programs, because as consultants, and I do believe I'm saying this on record, but as consultants, we sometimes think we have all the answers. So we talk a lot and we listen less. And we've got to start to teach our people to listen. So we're all, and I will be a certified coach myself in a couple of months, as will be a number of our people. So I think it's things like this that we're trying to do. And indeed, there've been opportunities for us to grow. But there's lots more to be spoken, and I'm going to hand it over to, I think Sarah wanted to say something.
Yes, Sarah, do you want also to give us your point of view around the how to maintain some level of culture for companies and distributed organization also? Did you find some real ideas that could inspire others?
And culture is more important than ever now. It always was important, but it is literally the way people are choosing which company to stay with or to walk across the line for. People, I think just given the fact that we are now dealing with one of the biggest global crises, which is mental health and wellness, colleagues are saying, am I staying with a company that cares about me beyond the work that I do? Is this a transactional relationship? Is it all about the services I provide and the money I get for it? Or do they actually care in the moments that matter? And when people are going through those very tough moments, we need empathy, and we need a company that balances empathy and economics. So your IQ and your EQ, because you are a business, you've got to make that work, but do you care about the colleagues as well? And really show that in the moments that matter. So I think those are the companies that will come out ahead, and those are the cultures that will thrive, that have that balance.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me, does anyone else want to add something around the culture on this rated organization? Please feel free. Anyway, I can ask questions on the chat. So I'm going.
If I may ask a question on this, I know that Zoom is pretty innovative, and they have a very strong engineering team, innovation team, and they have obviously the money part as well, right? So I'm just trying to understand whether they are working on some innovative tool to create that culture or to bring the employee engagement and things of that nature. So CJ, I don't know if you have any thought.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for sharing, Zaya and Sumit. Yes, internally, I find some of the things that we are doing, it's pretty. It actually helps collaboration and helps people feel that they are cared. So back to what we are talking about, like we try to give our employees some flexibility and depending on what they want. So we actually recently did a pilot of reopening the Sydney office, for example. We did surveys a few times, and just to make sure people know what that means, and giving them the flexibility of going back and what does going back means. I think everyone has a different answer. Their situation is different. Their home environment is different. So some prefers working from home, some prefers a bit of both, some prefers completely back to the office, right? So I think, culture stuff is, from our opinion, give them the flexibility and showing tangible care, that you have the option, you are heard, you make your own choice, right? But obviously, we also coordinate the team and be a little bit more intentional when we get together. What does that mean? Why are we together? And all that. Now, on top of that, I'm pretty proud to say that internally we have what we call a happy crew. There's a team of people who come up with all sort of tangible little things that make everyone happy. For example, we have Zoom Care program where you can donate, and then the company will match your donation to the charity you care. For example, we have Thrive program, and then Task Human that provides some consulting. So if anyone is in a stressful time, and they can go through that. So and we also have other like gift program to shout out to other like great behaviors, and all of which you can actually see more and more in our Zoom apps. We're integrating with a lot of like, for example, games where you can do a team building events. You can do an escape room on Zoom now. There's actually sort of splitting the escape rooms out of Zoom. So you can we have done that a few times, and it's pretty fun. So we have building different tools for and then also open up the ecosystem for everyone to really add the culture element into their work life.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to bring up maybe a little bit of a controversial topic around the tools that have been developed also through the COVID. I mean, we have seen some companies that literally made a lot of money during the early days of the COVID with a tracking application, tools that were actually taking screenshots of your face while you were working, just because people were in fear of losing control over their people. And this was very surprising. So how far do you think, and maybe it could be a good question for Shaya, how far do you think people need to go? Do we need to go through more tracking? Do you think there are ways that we still need to have some level of visibility when people decide to work at any time, because there are also some benefit of being able to manage your own flexible schedule rather than going the 9 to 5. So how far do you think we need to go? Do we need to bring in more visibility and more transparency on how we work?
I think that we need to treat people like adults and trust them. And I think something that measures how many hours you put in and clocked in, and that just takes away from that whole dynamic. So I would say, it's really the role of the people manager to stay close to their teams and agree on the best way to work and measure people on really good outcomes against well-crafted goals. Your goals are more important than ever. And having sort of a good rhythm of review and a conversation around how are you tracking against your goals? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the roadblocks? What are your highs and achievements and lows? That's a better way to manage people than sort of going down to a forensic review of hours and productivity in minutes. That sounds like a factory, you know. So I'd say let's elevate the conversation and work on outcomes and accountability and trust.
Interesting. And how about the flexible schedule part of it? So the fact that basically people can decide to adjust their shift, let's say, you know, even if you're working from home, you know that you could be disturbed at 11 or whatever. And you create those situations where you'll no longer really be able to know when is the right time to talk to people because you're, again, always connected. How about those situations of fear from the manager, maybe that they are trying to ping their colleague at the time where, I mean, it's 10:30. Why is he not here? So, I mean, do you think there are ways to provide this visibility without necessarily having to call it tracking to at least make the collaboration easier?
Yes, and I think we do that very well through, you know, Messenger, through Teams, or, you know, sometimes we're always resorting to WhatsApp. Sometimes, you know, we have that kind of like, by the way, can you talk? And I think that's those tools of staying connected are going to be important. Just being accessible is important, I think. And you know, now people are also doing location agnostic roles. Sometimes you're doing your role from like another country remotely. Are you going to mirror the timing of the home country, or are you going to manage it in a staggered way? Again, that's a conversation with your manager and what works best. But yeah, I would just say let's find the right way to stay connected. And that's most important. And then the solution is in that.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone want to add on to this part around, you know, the technologies that are used to provide more visibility around who works when and where? No? All right. So let me move on to the next question also. How maybe a question for you, Sumit, because also you are in the consulting world. So how do you foresee the evolution of recruitment towards the talents? So why, for instance, as a startup or a tech company, would I hire a $400,000 developers from the Silicon Valley to be my CTO when I could hire somebody maybe from another country with maybe similar skills? So how do you see the world of recruitment and talent and maybe wealth redistribution across the world in this new model where very traditional companies have discovered that they can probably hire people from anywhere?
No, certainly. I mean, I think we have to rethink our sourcing models to deliver from where we are. And truly, we are able to find the best talent now, and we have access, I think, so it's not just about time zones, but also what's been enabled a bit more for us is accessing freelancers, teleworkers, independent workers, and of course across borders. I mean, in the case of Singapore, and indeed, it's common knowledge today. I mean, that there is a war for talent, and just having a larger pool to choose from helps us a lot. What's changed? And I mean, we've always known that. What's changed for us really on the ground is that our clients are more open to it, and our people have gotten used to it. Our clients weren't always open to that. If you live in Asia, you find that sometimes clients say, I want my people to be based here. You're doing a project for me, I want them to move to Hong Kong, Singapore for a year. That means I do not now have access to the best talent, because people with school-going children don't want to move to Hong Kong from Paris or New York just for a year. So I think what it's enabled is a change in mindset. I mean, there's some logistics and so on in the talent model, but the biggest change that's happened is the change in mindset. And I think Nish referred to that, right? I mean, that's where the war is usually fought, you know, in the mind. I mean, the rest of it is details.
All right, thank you, Sumit. Mathieu brought a point to me around the onboarding. You know, as the the access to talents becomes very, very wide, with a lot of opportunities to find the best talent from anywhere. You also face some challenges around onboarding. How do you manage to get people to be sharing your culture when they come from very different places? How do you actually literally onboard them through the processes? How do you facilitate this process, as you won't be able to spend time in a room with that person for a couple of days? So Mathieu, maybe you have some thought about how do you manage on your own these kinds of onboarding, and anyone who's managing a distributed organization, CJ, Nishal, feel free to share with us. So Mathieu, maybe to begin with.
Yeah, so two things from our side. So yes, I think sourcing talents globally is the easy part. Onboarding them, though, is the probably challenge that organizations will have to solve. Because and speaking from experience, us as a startup, very averse to recruiting people before that would work remotely, especially on product. We really valued working on the product part here, at the HQ and so on. But all of a sudden, we had to keep, innovating on the product from a 100% remote perspective. So we started onboarding more people remotely, and we're totally fine having remote employees working for us now. But it really posed a challenge on how to, onboard them per se, bringing the culture and so on. And I think that part is definitely going to go virtual. I think the onboarding process will have to be thought from a remote perspective, hybrid potentially, but I think a remote 100% first. And Microsoft, as a client, it's a partner of us, but it's also a client, was really valuing we're welcoming you to the office part when onboarding newcomers. They had to redesign entirely their onboarding process. And it was about thinking about how could we gamify it so that it works from a remote perspective. So adding more quizzing, gamified quizzing to the experience. And that's how we got to work with them on that part, making sure that onboarding would still be fun, even though you're not stepping physically into a new office.
All right. And maybe Nisha, do you have, as you are, really pushing towards a remote model. So did you experience some great approach around onboarding of your people? Do you have some tips you'd like to share with others on how to make this successful?
Sure. I would love to. What's rightly been said here is that onboarding is a difficult process. It's also often not as closely looked at as other parts of the entire employee experience are. And onboarding literally plays the heaviest role in delivering a great first experience to any new hire. I've seen lots of great practices across the board. Gamification is definitely one way to ensure that everyone stays connected. Most importantly, the key fundamental of a good onboarding experience is radical transparency. Make sure that enough, try to defer towards over communication. It's there's no such thing as too much information being rolled out to someone who's just joining your company for the first time. Make sure that there are enough connections being made in the first few weeks of them joining as well. Help them not just inculcate within their own team and with their own managers, but also help them have enough cross-team collaboration and communication, and enough cross-team engagement in the first few weeks as well. Regular check-ins, mandatory regular check-ins are very important. It's something that a lot of companies do talk about, but it doesn't get enforced to a huge extent. Regular check-ins with both the immediate manager and a buddy from a different team. At the same time, cross-manager or step up of sorts. So, the boss of your boss, something like that. I've seen lots of companies trying to create checklists and very detailed documents around it. It just becomes a very painful experience for any new hire to go through. It just seems logical from my perspective, because I'll give you 20 documents to read, and that's all the onboarding that you really need. Instead, what we also start doing at AirMeet, and what I've seen other companies do, is start creating very short Loom videos or short recorded videos to do the entire onboarding process. So it feels more like a connected experience. It's not like, hey, here's a document about our marketing playbook, or here's the organization hierarchy. Why don't you go through these 20 pages and if you have questions, ask me. That doesn't really go down well. If I read through that document myself as a manager, and I record a short 5-7 minute video of it, and I send that video over to a new hire, and I'll ask them, hey, if you have any doubts, why don't you record a video and send it back to me? Because that is the face-to-face asynchronous collaboration that really takes the game to a much higher level. At the same time, if you have frequent town halls, if you have once a month, I mean, depending on the size of your organization, your team or your larger pod or your organization or your vertical might have once a month get together or virtual town hall of sorts. If you have that, definitely bring the new hires on board. Ask them a few really difficult questions. I mean, difficult, not technical difficult, but probably like something that catches them off guard. The reason to do that is because you want them to feel comfortable. You don't want this to be a very formal professional experience. You want them to kind of lose their step, say something wrong, which is okay, because it becomes like a casual moment that everyone shares, and it can happen from your side as well. So one thing that we do at AirMeet is that we ask everyone who joins us, what is it that you do when there's no internet? And more often than not, people don't have a great answer. They have to pause for a second and think about, okay, if I don't really have internet, what would I do, or what do I usually do? And it's a lot of funny answers at times, right? A lot of people do come back and say, I really don't have a great answer, but it just breaks the ice. It helps you have a conversation that's more human, that's more casual in nature. I think that's just what comes to my mind, top of my mind, but I'll keep adding later.
I mean, on what you said, I mean, one of the reasons maybe they struggle in giving you an answer is because we are just always connected. And it comes down to a point, though. How do we, in this new world where people are starting to work more and more remotely, and the very surprising effect of remote work is that people at first, before COVID, they were in fear of letting people work from home, etc. And now the opposite has actually happened. They realized that people ended up being more productive, which is, I mean, very it was not expected, but people are more productive because they're also starting to impact on their personal lives. There is no more time to transport to go to the office, to waste time like this, and you progressively start to put more working hours, and this really starts to impact your work-life balance. So, I mean, has anyone found a way to make sure your people don't burn out and they don't struggle with isolation of working remotely, and find a way to really balance this work-life balance approach? Did any one of you found a way to make it a real benefit for your employees to really thrive in this new model?
I'll just quickly add one more point, because building on your point, JP, more productivity doesn't have to mean more robotic as an experience. It has to become more human at the same time. So one more thing that we do as part of the onboarding process is that while 60% of the onboarding process is about your job, your team, and your exact KPIs and your pods and your documentation, a huge amount of effort is also given to your interests outside of your work life, outside of your work environment. And those interests are already a part of certain segments within AirMeet, right? So we've got a poker club, we've got a book reading club, we've got dog lovers. The whole idea is, why don't you find your best interest and you start engaging with that ASAP? Because even if you can't start your job from day one, you can still start talking about what interests you the most outside of work in this common channel, in this common thread. And that helps people find friends even before they find their coworkers. So I think by doing that, you just make it a more human experience for everyone.
All right, thank you. I mean, one question also from the audience around what are we doing to try and help companies specifically around mental health? Did anyone brought up some ideas also to make sure you care for the well-being of the people that are working remotely? Any tips, any ideas to that you want to share from your own organization?
I'd love to share, what we've done. Across the region, we have definitely elevated the fact that, we have employee assistance programs. So there are people that you can call, there's, counselors on the other end of the phone that you can have a discreet conversation with. So that's one. We've definitely upped our healthcare programs so that, people feel that they're more supported to help them through this crisis. And then we've also created an interesting app where, we look at mental, just great articles, short articles on how to sort of get de-stress, your financial well-being, your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, and create conversations around it. There's World Mental Health Days coming up on October 10th. So all of our markets are doing something, whether, it's remote or it's in person, everyone is being creative about what we can do to elevate that conversation.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. I mean, we are getting closer to the end. Also, I just wanted to make it maybe a more open question and answer approach. Does anyone from the panel also want to share one more thing about the the benefit that they discovered through this change of life, or the big negative impact that they discovered. Anyone wants to just bring it up there, just an open a question about their experience and what are the great things that experience from this situation? Anyone, just a more open question about the whole change that they are facing? I'll point out to CJ then. CJ, can you tell us?
I think
what are the greatest things that happened to you, or the worst things that happened to you through this change?
Yeah, look, on the one hand, just on the mental health, I think I'm so happy to see a lot of businesses are now building on top of Zoom app platform, where they actually get coach and consultants to actually speak to people who are in need. For example, like Fly, which is an app built by Ariana Huffington. It is actually a part of Zoom app, so like anyone can click a Zoom app and talk to a consultant and talk about their problems and actually have a channel to speak to others. Now, I think other than that, I think one thing that I learned during the pandemic is I started to play piano. So I think focusing on something while like you have done, let's say, a very intense like day, and then that really relax your mind. I think if I were to give advice to anyone that is quite stressed about being in a room for too long and all this lockdown happening, so I think it's pick up one thing that kind of is completely new and it's gonna take you a lot of time to pick up. Then I think that will actually get some perspective, and also we can appreciate life.
All right, thank you, CJ. Does anyone else want to add anything about their experience or anything they really enjoyed with their new way of working?
Yeah,
or they really
Sumit, I might say that I'm fortunate enough to live in a city which has a lot of parks, and so in our organization, our favorite meeting place is now Gardens by the Bay, which is where we go for a walk when we want to meet. And you show up in your shorts, you might cycle there, and you walk in and you do your meeting. And we've encouraged, there are many calls, and this is one that could be done from the park. Don't need your computer. Feel free to do that. It's a little thing, but I think it's allowed. And for me anyway, I don't know about everyone else, but I benefited from it tremendously. So perhaps it's also about finding some of the little things. And, today I've got a shirt on, but just to, chill out a little bit, I think.
I'm doing the same thing, by the way, on taking calls by doing a hike or something. This is really a good way to not having a computer and share screen and go deep into some task review and so on. I think it's a great way to do it. Does anyone?
Yeah, I'd love to share. For me, it's at a very personal level. I feel like, and it's for the world. We've had a loss of certainty in our lives. So for me, it was, you don't control anything in your life. All you control is how you get through one day. And what I do is I start my day every morning by doing something positive. And I do a little skipping and a little yoga on my roof, get some fresh air and set my intention for the day. And then I can do anything. I can take anything that comes my way. So that's been my tactic.
All right, thank you. So we had someone says that employees have to learn how to say no. So I think, if I can try and make a parallel with how we work, it's also a way we are always connected. So I think it's also important to disconnect yourself, shut down Microsoft Teams or Slack or whatever, put yourself as off. You have moments of work, but seriously, if you work with different countries, time zones, it's you can get trapped into working, 15, 16-hour days. It can be crazy. So, and at some point you will just burn out. So you just have to be careful and preserve your well-being so that during the moments of work you are efficient and focused. But it's also quite important. Anyone else want to add anything? Maybe before we close the call.
Maybe pointing the obvious as well, but it's also working towards a more sustainable way of doing business. We stopped traveling to conferences that, to be honest, if they come back, I'm gonna ask myself twice if I need to fly, to the US or elsewhere to actually attend. They'll have to prove the value of potential, good networking, something that we've been missing from online events. But we definitely cut back on some traveling that we're not going to bring back, because we realized that we could do efficient meetings, meeting with partners, prospects, clients from a remote perspective. We'll save some face-to-face time for, you know, high intensity sort of catch-ups.
Yeah. One thing I can say also, I don't know if it's really directly related, but I can tell you the air in Hong Kong is much cleaner since the COVID happened. I don't know if it's connected, but I know, I mean, to some extent, you know, being able to stop, you know, getting all packed into the traffic at the same time. I mean, there are things that we can get out of it also by deciding when to go to work and so on. Pankaj, do you want to maybe be the one wrapping up?
No, I really want to thank the audience, the panelists for providing all the insights and input about the hybrid work and their own experiences, the strategies that they have in their organizations, and so on and so forth. Thanks a lot to Nishchal for being outspoken, honest, and sharing different perspectives. That's also very much needed. So yeah, thanks everybody. And if you want to connect with the panelists, please feel free to do that. We really want you to make sure that you are able to, again, reconnect with them and get their insights on different kind of topics. So again, thanks everybody for joining the call today, and let's reconnect again in the next few weeks and months and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody. Take care.